We're talking about the organelles today of the cell, and the first one is my favorite organelle, the mitochondria. This is sometimes called the powerhouse of the cell because it makes the energy, ATP. So it generates cellular ATP. It's the site of aerobic cellular respiration, which means burning glucose. So aerobic means that it needs oxygen, and cellular respiration means that it burns glucose to make ATP. So we've got the reaction that most of you know now, C6H12O6, and that's glucose. And if you're you get the glucose from eating it. If you're, let's see, if you're a plant cell, you get the glucose because you made it in your chloroplast. So you take glucose, and this is aerobic cellular respiration, so you have oxygen. And you break that glucose down with the oxygen, and you make carbon dioxide. And let's see, you make water, and you make ATP. So if we're going to balance this, I think there's, let's see, 6 of these. So that's 6 carbons and 6 carbons. And then 12 hydrogens means I'd need a 6 here. So that would be 6 times 2. That would be 12. And then I've got 6 oxygens here. And then this is 6 times 2. That's 12. So I would need 6 oxygens here. And I make either 36 or 38 ATP depending on how it's done. And there I am. So a whole bunch of ATP made from this. If you don't have oxygen and you just do something called glycolysis, you're just breaking the glucose in half, which still gets ATP, but not a whole lot. So that's the topic of another unit. But for what I want you to know for now is that the mitochondrion are these really special organelles. They're membrane bound. They've got a membrane in them. They are found in every single eukaryotic cell, meaning they're found in animals, plants, fungi, and protists. They are not found in bacteria, so they are not found in prokaryotes. So what is aerobic cellular respiration? Oops, it looks like I already did that. So it's breaking the bonds in glucose. Remember, glucose is C6H12O6. And you do that to release energy. And that's captured in our favorite molecule. Whoops, ATP. So here's glucose. And here's, whoops, here's ATP, adenosine. And here's the sugar. So this is an RNA nucleotide. And the triphosphate means 1, 2, 3 phosphate bonds. This is your high energy one, meaning the cell, whoops, right here, meaning the cell is equipped to be able to break that down and use its energy. And this thing is glucose, which is glucose plus sugar. The mitochondria need oxygen. You know that because C6H12O6 plus oxygen. So you need your oxygen in order to do this reaction. When you breathe in, you're taking in oxygen mainly from mitochondria. Thank you, respiratory system. So you breathe in, the oxygen goes through your nose or your mouth, down your trachea to pretend there's no blockage or whatever there. So the air goes down your trachea, into your bronchial tubes, into your lungs, and then these things break into smaller and smaller little branches till they get to your teeny little alveoli, microscopic alveoli, and from there they go into the blood, and from the blood they go around your entire body, and maybe to a cell in your arm. And so in that cell, let's look at the cell, let's pretend the cell is bigger. In that cell, you've got a nucleus and endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi bodies, blah, blah, blah. You've also got mitochondria. So from the blood, oxygen will diffuse to the mitochondria, and then the mitochondria can do business. Which cells in your body would have lots and lots of mitochondria? Okay, so what's the cell in your body that you really, it needs a ton of energy, and if it gets tired, you're in big, 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 big trouble. So the more active cells, so things like muscle and nerve, so muscle. And what's the one muscle in your body that really, really has to keep going all the time? 72 times a minute, 60 minutes an hour, 24 hours a day, times your entire life. That would be, hopefully it's right here. Whoops, sorry. Let's go backwards. That would be cardiac muscle cells. So all of your muscle cells have a lot of all of your muscle cells have a lot of mitochondria, but cardiac muscle cells have the most. About 30%, something like that. 30% of their volume is mitochondria, which is a huge number. Your skeletal muscles, like your bicep, are like 2% mitochondria. So it's a real big problem if your cardiac muscle cells get tired. So you need lots and lots of mitochondria. Do plant cells or animal cells have mitochondria? Who needs to use sugar? Both. So all prokaryotes, sorry, I said that backwards. All eukaryotes have them. So it begs the question kind of, what do bacteria do? Well, they have other processes, but they certainly don't have any mitochondria to do this for them. So they are not as cool as you are. So because both plants and animals and fungi and protists for that matter need to break down sugar for energy. Structure of mitochondria. It's surrounded by a double membrane. So here's the outer membrane and here's the inner membrane. The inner membrane has all these folds. So here's this inner membrane with all these folds. Those folds are called cristae, which is written right here. And then the inner stuff here is the goop in there. It's sort of like cytoplasm. It's called matrix. So the interior is called the matrix. And that's really still one of my favorite movies, but it was made before you guys were born. Bummer for you. Okay, structure of mitochondria. The inner folds fold into these things called cristae, and that's important because it increases the surface area. And this thing has tons and tons and tons of enzymes, which do the chemical reactions, and so that's why the big surface area there is kind of a big deal. So this increases the surface area for more chemical reactions. Crazy cool stuff about mitochondria. Are you ready? In size and biochemistry, they resemble bacteria. So here's a eukaryotic cell. It's got a nucleus with its DNA. It's got endoplasmic reticulum. It's got Golgi bodies. It's got ribosomes. It's got lysosomes, and it's got mitochondria. If that's a mitochondrion, bacteria are about the same size. In biochemistry, the ribosomes in here, that's a eukaryotic ribosome. Bacteria have DNA with no nucleus. They also have ribosomes, but their ribosomes are different a little bit. They're ribosomes that you would find in prokaryotic cells. So they are prokaryotic type ribosomes. They're a little bit smaller. Ribosomes. You actually find ribosomes just like them inside mitochondria. You find DNA inside prokaryotes. You actually find mitochondrial DNA, not in the nucleus, but in mitochondria. I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's really pretty cool. So these mitochondria contain their own DNA and their own ribosomes. Whoa, that is unbelievable. We said that in a eukaryotic cell, the DNA is inside the nucleus. We didn't say the DNA is inside mitochondria, but it is. They have their own DNA, which is amazing. And they divide on their own. So the nucleus doesn't direct them entirely to divide. Sometimes they divide on their own, which is kind of amazing. So there's this theory called the endosymbiotic theory, and this lady's the one who figured it out. She only died a year or two ago. Mitochondria, and for that matter, chloroplasts, and actually all the plast things in plants, may have evolved from ancient bacteria that were engulfed by a larger cell but weren't digested. And they developed this symbiotic relationship over time. So that's why these things have a double membrane, maybe. And that's why they have their own DNA. And that's why the ribosomes in here resemble bacterial ribosomes. So actually, they've evolved for so long with us, ever since eukaryotic cells first became eukaryotic cells. They've been with us for so long that some of the proteins in here are made by nuclear DNA, and some of the proteins in here are made by mitochondrial DNA. Kind of crazy, huh? So here's the timeline of the evolution of life. So first you have a prokaryote. And they are thinking maybe if you have these, it's called an invagination. Try not to laugh too much. Anyway, if you have these membranes that kind of fold inside, that might have been what made the double membrane in the nucleus, and maybe that's how we got endoplasmic reticulum. It's hard to say, but that's what they theorize. But we have a lot of evidence for this one. And here's the early eukaryote engulfing aerobic heterotrophic prokaryotes. In other words, engulfing bacteria that eventually will evolve into mitochondria. So here's an ancestral cell that would become, we would have evolved from this cell. And here's a cell that already had the mitochondria, but now is engulfing bacteria that are photosynthetic, which is totally amazing. So this would be the ancestral plant cell. So they would have both mitochondria and chloroplasts, whereas the animal, the ancestral animal cell would only have the mitochondria. So that is just cool, way cool. So because these things evolved from bacteria, they're my just favorite they're my favorite organelle. I think they're so cool. They have their own DNA, their own ribosomes. So to think that all of your trillions of cells have symbiotic bacteria that actually now depend on the cell. It's actually part of you now. It's not even a bacterium anymore, but it was once. That is just really funky. Okay, more fun facts. Okay, this is kind of cool too. More reasons to love mitochondria because it's just cool. Okay, ready? So now we're kind of on a different track. It's going to come back to mitochondria in a minute, but so let's get to reproduction for a minute. So for reproduction, you need an egg and you need a sperm cell. So the egg comes from mom and the sperm cell comes from dad. And pretty much the thing that dad contributes is his DNA. So half of your DNA roughly, well, half of your nuclear DNA exactly comes from dad, and half of your nuclear DNA comes from mom. You put these two things together and you make a zygote, and that will divide a bunch of times and grow, and that'll be you. Yay! So anyway, who's this sperm that fertilized the egg? Well, you figure there are trillions of sperm trying to get there. So the one that wins is the one that gets there first, right? And is able to get through to the egg first before the egg says nope, no more. So sperm that swim fast are the winners. Is that what I have here? Yep, they win. Sperm that swim fast win. Good job, guy. Fast sperm are, look at the size of this thing. Here's an egg. It's enormous compared to this tiny sperm cell. So the ones that swim fast are not carrying a whole lot of extra weight. They've got one very good functional flagellum, and they're carrying pretty much only their DNA, and so they're tiny. If they were bigger, they wouldn't be able to swim fast. So fast sperm are small. Therefore, sperm do not carry organelles. The only thing that dad's contributing here is half of the DNA to make the baby. So mitochondria, therefore, have to come from the cytoplasm. So you figure the egg has the DNA, plus it's got all the organelles. It has all the machinery, the endoplasmic reticulum, the Golgi body, everything to get started here. Excuse me. So the mom contributes half the DNA, the dad contributes half the DNA, but the mom contributes all the stuff, all the cytoplasm, all the organelles. So the mitochondria come from the cytoplasm in the egg during fertilization. So therefore, you inherit your mitochondria from your mom. Thanks, Mom. So you can thank your dad for half your DNA, and you can thank your mom for the other half, but you can thank your mom alone for your mitochondrial DNA. It actually provides for some really, really cool evolutionary studies when you look at this, because your chromosomal DNA gets all mixed up when you make babies. You take some from your mom and dad and mix them up to make your sperm or your eggs. But your mitochondria, those are only passed from mother to kids. So they're kind of cool. All right, quiz time. What reaction occurs in mitochondria? Well, you do the one in mitochondria. You do cellular respiration. And you can't make sugar. You have to eat it. So it's going to be this one, B. The energy from this reaction is captured in. Okay, so this is one where you're breaking down glucose. So you're capturing that in ATP. The endosymbiosis hypothesis is supported by all of the following pieces of evidence, except the fact that, okay, so the mitochondria thing and the chloroplasts, actually they were both endosymbiotic, right? So chloroplasts split like prokaryotes, that's true. Mitochondria have circular DNA like prokaryotes, that's true. Mitochondria have a double membrane, that's true, and it does support the theory because if they came into bacteria, if they came into a eukaryotic cell, that means the eukaryotic cell would have had to kind of invaginate like that, and you would have gotten the cell membrane around them. Chloroplasts have ribosomes like prokaryotes, that's true. Mitochondria synthesize glucose like prokaryotes. That means make glucose. Nope, mitochondria don't make glucose. So that's the one that's wrong. Who has mitochondria? Everybody except bacteria. So plant cells, animal cells, fungi, protists, all eukaryotes, but no bacteria. When mitochondria break down glucose, the energy is captured in ATP. I hope you're pausing this before I give you the answers. The function of mitochondria is cellular respiration. The blank of a mitochondrion is or are an adaptation that increases the surface area and enhances a mitochondrian's ability to produce ATP. So that's cristae, so that's just a vocabulary term to memorize. So if this is a mitochondrion, that's the outer membrane. The inner membrane is highly folded, and those folds are called cristae. The endosymbiotic hypothesis proposes that a small cell lived inside a larger cell to the benefit of both cells. Actually, that's it. Two cells merged into one, improving one cell was dependent on the other for survival. Well, they kind of both got dependent on each other. A large cell engulfed and digested. Nope, in this case, it didn't actually digest the smaller one. All right, that's it for mitochondria.